My name is Robert Franklin II. I'm a diversity, equity, inclusion practitioner. I'm a youth developer. I use the pronouns he, him, and his, and identify as a black man here in the United States. I bring those identities to you because in this conversation around emotional intelligence, I think it's really important that we have an idea of who you are in your own identity in order to be able to be the leader that it is that you want to be. And so, as part of this conversation, I want to present that to you that I want you to know some things about me before I even start talking so that you know where I'm coming from, that my perspective, and even that it's okay to talk about some things that are considered taboos in our societies, in our cultures, in our communities. And so I start with that, knowing that we're going to have this kind of conversation. Just want to say thank you to Amy and the StandUP team for allowing me to bring this to you. I am sorry I couldn't be with you. I'm literally, while you're watching this, in the midst of a consultation myself. And so that's some of the work that I do, and I'll share that with you at a different time. When I'm thinking about being a leader and showing up as my best, I think of three things. First, that this is journey work. Second, that we're not looking for perfection in this effort. And then third, that when we talk about equity and inclusion, those concepts are really not as solid as we think that they are. First, journey work means that this is going to be a while. This is not, I'm going to be competent, I'm going to be perfect at it by some determined amount of time. This is something that we're on for a lifetime. This is lifetime work. And so knowing that gives me a little bit more opportunity to fail, to mess up, and to show that it's okay to be that. And even in perfection, when we talk about being perfect or having all the right answers and knowing all of the answers, that's a part of perfection that is not necessary in this work. Actually, being vulnerable, being fallible, being able to show that you are learning something and that you are going to get it wrong makes it okay for other people to do so. And especially if they are folks that are following you or that you are reporting to you, those are very important traits. And then when thinking about equity and inclusion, we're talking about something that not all of us have the same definition of. And so if that is the case, we have to take into account that as we are leading, we are going to be in a flexible situation. We need to be in a flexible situation. We need to be thinking through how things might change, that inclusion looks different today than it did in the 1990s. Even diversity, as we talk about diversity, it used to be a conversation around tolerance, not necessarily inclusion in what we're trying to engage in today. And equity is a very new concept in so many different industries that we're teaching along this journey. And so trying to be a leader in this space can be very tough if you're trying to get it right now. There are things that you probably have and you can add, but as long as you know that what you bring to the table is an educational spirit, one that is open to change and flexibility. The concept of leadership being lonely is really interesting because as a person out in front responsible for diversity, equity, and inclusion narratives, ideas, statements, efforts, you're responsible. You're the one who's supposed to lead on that. And what you're doing is leading a change in historical, in institutional, in structural processes that have been around for eons, for centuries. And so to try to change that is going to make you unpopular as a leader. It can make you as a challenger of status quo. It can certainly make you the person that makes people feel uncomfortable. And knowing that is first half of the battle. The second piece about that is that you're going to have to be the one who's going to be exposed, that you, when you fail, when you mess up, you're the one who everybody's going to look at. And right now, out of 2020 into 2021, we really need to change this idea of cancel culture because if leaders can't mess up, then who can, right? And so we as leaders need to make sure that we are not involved in that cancel culture, and then we let others know that that's not the way to learn, that's not the way to grow, that's not the way to build. So that's going to call for some vulnerability on your part, which is not easy. When you are the person in charge, when you are the one everyone is looking to, being vulnerable, showing your mistakes, and owning up to them, it feels dangerous. And that's just the way it is. It is just something that you have to do. And the benefit of being that transparent, communicative, vulnerable person is going to pay back in dividends when folks know that they can air with you, that it's okay that they make mistakes as well, and that you're not going to admonish them or cancel them for the mistakes that they're making. That's how people will continue to open up and provide the kind of information you're going to need to be able to shift your organization or your relationships, because you're going to have a more open and honest conversation with the teammates and with the people that you're working with and working alongside. In doing that, it's going to be hard, it's going to be dangerous, it's going to be challenging. But who else is going to do it? So I might sound like a broken record when I say that you got to admit your own imperfections, but I think that that's part of the key to emotional intelligence. You don't have it all. You don't know it all. You don't have it all, and you're not always going to be right. And if you expect that of yourself, if you set that tone for yourself, then others are going to do that for themselves and give themselves grace and give yourself grace. Supporting my own journey is going to be very important. And so I think about, how did I get through 2020? And the way that I did that was asking for help. And as a leader, you have to be open to and interested in asking for help, and not just help from those who will always agree with you or the people that love you the most. Those are great people to ask for from help, right? My mother is a great mentor of mine and a great coach of mine. At the same time, you need to seek out people who have different perspectives and different realities than you do. The whole concept of empathy is trying to figure out how to put yourself in someone's shoes. So if you always are in that confirmation space where everyone who's telling you what you need to know or what you want to know, they all look like you, they all pray like you, they all go to the shopping where you go shopping, you're not actually going to get the information that you need to be able to deal with the people that you serve, that you work with, that you work alongside with, all of that. As a leader, you got to ask for help. And so for me, I, in 2020, started an equity conversation series. I just asked a few people if they wanted to meet on a Friday. We can go sit down and have a conversation about equity. And so they're from different industries. They're definitely from different backgrounds than mine. And that was hugely important for me. When I think about seeking out people who are different from me, I just happen to identify as a Black man in the United States here in Colorado. And so most of the people that I talk to professionally are identify as white. In the industries that I'm in education and health and youth development, many of them are female. And so I have to do some work in trying to find groups of people who will give me information beyond those lived experiences, those that I mentioned in my own. So I have to do a lot of digging into groups that I'm not used to being a part of. The virtual world makes that a challenge, and also it opens up some spaces. And so I'm a part of different groups through LinkedIn. I'm a part of different groups through Facebook and others, and trying to learn stuff from people who I don't even necessarily agree with, but knowing where they're coming from and their perspective is important to my own practice. And I'd say that one of the best things that I found in 2020 and moving into 2021 in my practice is finding catharsis in my work. Now, this isn't for everybody. I happen to be able to talk about my mess ups, talk about the things that I'm working on in my practice. So when I'm facilitating, when I'm teaching, when I'm training, I talk about things that I messed up on or things that I've experienced, because I think you can learn from someone else's mistakes and someone else's growth. Amy Brady taught me that very early on in this process, that if I can't talk about where I might be wrong or when I might be wrong, then how am I going to do that with other people? How am I going to profess that to other people? So I am definitely indebted to her in that. And then I just think it's important that showing the humane fallibility that we all have, even if you're the person in the front of the room, even if you're the person with the director title or the executive title, if you can mention how you're growing, it makes it okay for other people to do so. One of my favorite leadership tactics that I try to share as often as possible, and I think is going to be helpful in this conversation, is to ask more questions than providing more tells. A lot of times as leaders, we tell people what it is that we want them to know, we tell them what we want them to do, and we don't often ask questions. And so if you're thinking about your emotional intelligence, how are you going to know where people stand, where their mindset is, how they're feeling, if you don't ask questions? And especially if, when you're doing all the listening that you're practicing now in this series and in your journey work, you're doing a great job listening. But how are you going to do more of that if you're not asking questions? How are you going to learn about the people that you're dealing with without asking questions? Oftentimes we tell people what it is we think that they should know, what it is that we think they should do. Myself, I'm a problem solver, so I very quickly to say, you know what I think you should do? Or when I was in this situation, this is what I would have done. Or when this happened to someone I know, this is what we decided to do. Ask questions. What is it that you need right now? How is it that you would like me to help you? What are you missing that you don't have right now that we need to find in order to help you solve this problem? Asking questions is going to help with emotional intelligence, because you're going to be able to find out where they are and then go from there. But if you're engaging with a lot of tells and a lot of statements, you're going to miss out on very crucial information. Thanks for letting me share, and hopefully we'll get together sometime soon.